Recently I've been putting out some videos just on some little odd topics here and there about studying Japanese, and like the more videos I make recently, the more I noticed that I've kind of like run out of things to talk about. I feel like I kind of covered everything there is to do with learning Japanese. Like, of course I can go into like more detail, but like even if I was to go into like more and more detail, there's not much like reason for that. You get what I mean? Like, I could say like all these little details and all that, but like what are you really going to get out of that? It's just going to make you like, I don't know, like focus too much on those little things rather than the big concepts, and realizing that you don't need to have every little detail down to learn a language. In general, it's just like nail a few principles and just go from there, and you can kind of do it all on your own. So I feel like even if I am to make more videos from now, there's not really like any point. So like, I'm not saying that I'm going to stop making any sort of videos, but for now I think I'm just going to stop making any sort of like language learning videos. I might make something else to do with Japan or whatever, but we'll see what happens in the future. But for now, this is probably going to be my final video on like learning Japanese and that. So yeah, it's been about a year since I made that 3 years of learning Japanese and kind of like went out and made all these videos. But in this last year, I feel like I've kind of like talked about everything that I feel like I needed to. Like at the start, when I first started this, the reason I started this channel was like, I noticed, right, that there's all these other people learning Japanese on YouTube, teaching Japanese and that. And I realized like they've gotten like results much, much slower, but because of the fact that they've used a method so much different to mine. So I thought, well, if I come here and put out my method, because it's so much different to like what a lot of these other guys are doing. If I put out my method, maybe it's going to help a few people that were like me or wanted to learn the same way I did. So that's the reason I started. But more and more recently, I feel like I'm just making videos for the sake of making videos, if you know what I mean. So because of that, I feel like maybe it's time for this to, come to an end. At least the whole like making these sort of videos. I'm sure I'll make some more videos in the future on other things, but like, to do with Japan. But yeah, probably in the near future, to be honest. I'll keep making videos, but this will be the last one most likely on just purely how to learn Japanese or Japanese learning in general. I'll probably touch on it in the future, but yeah, you know what I mean? Like this is probably the last sort of like video dedicated solely to learning Japanese. So it's been 4 years now since I started learning Japanese. I couldn't say 4 years of study because I only really hardly studied the first year or two. And then since then, I've done whatever, but I'll talk about that later on in the video. But yeah, 4 years since I started learning Japanese. So I could sit here, right, like all these other guys who did AJ or whatever, Refold, all those other methods, and talk about, this is what I did. Like, I had all these like little things I did and like talk about all the things I've done. But I feel like I kind of already addressed that in all these other videos. So because of that, I think rather than talking about all the shit I've done and like, look at me, I did this, like, which I feel like, you're not really going to get too much out of that. I think I might just kind of sit here and just give some advice for people just starting off or like at a kind of intermediate stage, just looking back in the last 4 years, kind of some sort of advice I can give, things I wish I knew when I first started or when I was a year into the process. The biggest thing, which I feel like would have helped me a lot if I knew at the start, and like I feel like could help a lot of other people because, I've got the Discord server or whatever. Well, I did. The Discord server is not really too much of a thing anymore, but I had that, and I noticed a lot of people saying like, questioning a lot of things, saying, well, I put in this much effort. Am I really getting anything out? Like, I feel like I'm not progressing and all that sort of stuff. And of course I had the same sort of worries at the start, right? And did for like quite a long time into it. And I feel like the biggest piece of advice that I can give you is just trust the process. Like, trust what you're doing is going to lead to the outcome which you desire. Like, as long as you consistently put in effort and consistently put in hard work, you're going to get a result, even if it doesn't feel like it. Like, the biggest thing, especially with the methods that I kind of discuss on here, is like, it's so much effort and it is like a big result in the end, but it's so much effort for like initially not many results. Because like I've talked about before, when you're doing this sort of like immersion and like learning through listening, the first year, 6 months, however long, is going to feel like you're not getting much progress. It's going to feel like you're essentially doing nothing. And it can get a bit, taxing mentally because you start to sit there and think, fuck, is this really worth it? Like, what am I doing this for? But you need to like trust the fact that if you keep putting in hours, eventually you're going to get the result that you wanted. Eventually you're going to be able to understand shit and, talk and all that. But you just have to trust what you're doing is working, and trust the fact that if you keep consistently putting in effort without, taking large breaks and stuff, you are going to get the results you want. The reason I say this is such a big thing is because like, if you don't trust it and you're constantly questioning yourself, it's a pretty quick way to just, kind of like fuck with your mental health, honestly. Like, it really does. Like, if you're just constantly questioning yourself and everything you're doing and wondering if it's worth it, you're going to start to like, have a degrading sort of mental health. And as such, you're going to be able to put in less and less hard work into immersing and doing all that. And you just kind of it's not a good cycle. You know what I mean? You're going to, get upset with yourself. So you put in less effort and therefore you get less results. And then, you get more upset. So you're in a real downward sort of spiral. So you want to just like avoid that by just trying to trust the process, and as much as you can enjoy the process as well. Not only trusting it, but trying to find ways to enjoy it along the way and not let it be some grueling process the entire time. Another big thing that I found like initially is like, I don't know, like maybe if you just do Japanese a little bit here and there and it's just like a little bit of a hobby, little things like say you talk, like I remember I had this experience, say you talk in like a group call with Japanese people, right? Or just in a group in general. It's fine one-on-one, right? Like when you talk one-on-one with someone, it's pretty easy because they're going to match your pace. If there's something you don't understand, you can ask them and they're going to kind of, match what they're saying to like your sort of level of speaking. But if you're in a group, right, especially if you're in like a phone call because they can't read you and can't read your expression, they might just be gone. Like say there's like 2 Japanese people, 3 Japanese people, and then you might just be sitting there listening and being like, what the fuck is going on? Like you're sitting there, you got no idea what's happening and you're just stuck not being able to participate, and it kind of leaves you feeling like shit, right? Like not being able to participate in a group call or, hanging out with friends and not being able to understand it. It really can fuck with you. Like same thing if you like go to Japan and you're not really like able to output in the way that you wish you could or like thought you could, or same way you might not be able to understand everything that you thought you'd be able to. It can really, like fuck with you. I really had that a lot, like because I was putting in so much effort that you expect these huge amount of results, which you won't get until later on in the process. Like the first 6 months, even the first 3 months are probably the worst because it's so much effort and you haven't started seeing the results yet. So it's pretty easy to like, when you like say test yourself by trying to talk to someone and failing, to get quite upset with yourself. But again, this kind of comes back to the whole trust in the process thing. Don't get upset by these little things and just trust the process and keep going with it and don't let that kind of beat you down. Then another big thing I kind of want to touch on is a lot of people look at like how I studied Japanese, right, and say, oh, well, yeah, you put in a huge amount of effort, but that's not, realistic for most people. And yeah, maybe not. Maybe it's not like realistic for a lot of people. But the reason I recommend it so much is like, do you know what's more unrealistic? Like, at least to me, I find this unrealistic, is to think that I'm going to be like spending multiple hours a week, because say you aren't doing what I'm doing, where you're doing multiple hours a day. You say you do multiple hours a week and you're kind of stretching the process out. I can't imagine doing that for like 10 years and only just eventually getting to where you want to be in terms of like how you can output and understand and everything. I'd much rather say grind it out for a year or two, 1 or 2 years, just sit there and listen as much as you can and grind out that like real hard process at the start and then just enjoy it for the rest of your life. Because the thing is with the language, as long as you maintain it, you're going to be able to just like, grind it out for the first year or two, put a huge amount of effort in, get it done, get to the point where you can understand most things, you can speak completely like to the degree that you want to. And then all of a sudden you've got this skill that you can use for the rest of your life. Like even me, for example, now, like because I put in so much work initially for the first year or so, like I said at the start, like it's been 4 years since I started studying, but I haven't really studied for 4 years. Like I studied for a year or two max, but until I like started doing other shit and just like enjoying using Japanese. Like, of course I used it and stuff. If you consider that study, then sure. But like, there was no like specific study sitting down and listening and doing all this shit, like 100% for the purpose of getting better. That kind of stopped after a year or two of doing it because I was already at a level where I was pretty comfortable. But like, yeah, I put in that effort at the start and I could just enjoy it. Like even now, like say someone comes up to me randomly down the street, if they're Japanese, speak to me in Japanese, maybe it'll take a few seconds for me to click and be like, oh shit, they're speaking Japanese. But like once I do, it's pretty easy for me to just like switch into Japanese and English whenever I want and use it whenever. Like for me, it no longer feels like a big thing, like the fact that I know Japanese, because it's just such a passive skill that I have now. Like, for instance, like, yeah, I don't know, like I've had experiences where people will just like randomly come up to me and speak to me in Japanese, and then I'll be like, oh shit, they're speaking Japanese, and then can talk to them and, become friends with them through that or whatever. But like all that now is just because of the first year or two that I put in. And since then I haven't really had to put in that much effort. So I really think one big piece of advice I have for beginners, intermediate people is just like put in all that effort at the start and you're going to just be able to enjoy that for the rest of your life. You won't be stuck sitting there studying every day for like 10 years when you could just grind it out in a year or two and be happy with it. Like it's not like something else, for instance, like say you want to do like, you want to be a runner, you want to run really fast, like get good times for running. The problem with that, right, is like, it's not one of those things that you get really good at and it's a skill that you just have for the rest of your life. Like you can get like super fit, but say what happens if you blow out your knee? You blow out your knee, you got to go to have surgery on it maybe, and then like recovery is like 9 months or whatever. You got to build back all the muscles in your leg and start from zero again, essentially. Like, that's a whole different thing, isn't it? Because it's so easy to lose fitness, not even just from blowing out your knee. You could just like, take a few weeks off and your time goes down like a lot, like how fast you run in 5Ks or something. It's not a skill necessarily like fitness, but Japanese is different. You can put in all this time at the start, get really good at it, and just have it for the rest of your life. People talk about language attrition, like losing your language abilities, but I don't know how little you have to study to really lose it 100%. Because I do fuck all, to be honest, for Japanese. Like, I listen to it. I listen to a lot of Japanese music. I'll talk to some people in Japanese, but very rarely. Honestly, actually, at the moment, the only person I really talk to in Japanese isn't even Japanese. So like, I don't know. I barely use it, and I've still got the ability there. So I really think it's worth just like putting in all the time at the start, getting it done with, and just having that skill for the rest of your life. If it's anyone who's like, this is the first video of mine you're seeing, check out all the other videos I've got on like how to learn Japanese. I got that masterclass series, which is pretty much just like everything I kind of know about learning Japanese condensed into a series. So if you're interested, watch that. Otherwise, I think this is it. Thanks guys for watching all these. Like, it's been good fun the last year or so putting these out. I don't know where I'll take the channel from now. I mean, it'll still be Japanese related content. I don't know exactly what I'll do, but yeah, this is kind of it for I think immersion learning and all that. Probably going to be my last video on it for a decent amount of time. But yeah, thanks for subscribing, all of you. Thanks for always watching my videos, participating in the Discord and everything like that. It's been good fun. And yeah, I hope you'll stick around for whatever I do next in this channel. Thanks guys.